Because I know that Doug's heart behind this is to kind of give you all some things to latch onto, and then we'll have discussion. I'm not going to necessarily dive deep. I'm just going to throw some things at you, and whatever questions that you have during the discussion time, we could talk more about that. But I have almost 2 decades of experience within the financial industry in different aspects, background, degrees, licenses, all different types of things in that regard. So when it comes to when it comes to the financial industry, that's something that God has specifically wired me for the body of Christ in that regard. So I have unique skills in that regard. So I want to say that just so that you can get an understanding of kind of just some context. One, I've been inside of the pastorate for 1.5 years. And since then, we've increased giving over 100% since I've been here. Okay, so that's just to kind of help you understand that there's a track record of also me being inside of a pastoral role, and there's also some success in what I'm getting ready to share with you in that regard. So with that being said, I want to throw I'll start off with just saying you have to be able to be willing to teach it. So I teach a lot of it. I'm not afraid to teach about giving. Sometimes I think that when it comes to giving, we might be a little bit shy when to talk about giving, whether it be from the pulpit, whether it be from a Bible study setting. Don't be shy to talk about it. I can tell you that in my experience, right now, still to this day, one of the most highest Sundays in people actually joining the church was when I was teaching on giving. It actually it surprised me, but till to this day, that's one of the highest Sundays where somebody actually joined the church, and is when I was teaching on giving in that regard. Now, when you teach it, I'll say this: I try to teach it in a way where it's not that I want something from you, but I want something for you. There's a difference. If you come across as if you're begging, then that's going to really shut people down. Which brings me to the whole thing. You have to really understand your cultural context. In my cultural context, I understand that there are people that have been kind of jaded in some way by pastors. There are a lot of things that end up, hitting the news. None of the good pastors hit the news. All the bad pastors hit the news, right? So I have to be culturally aware of the fact that if I come in here looking like a flashy pastor, right? Driving this, doing this, that's a turnoff in this generation. In the past generation, it might have worked differently, but in this generation, that can turn this generation off. So I have to be aware of how I'm showing up, because they're like, why are you looking like that? And over here, they can't eat. And then over here, you're asking for certain things. So you have to be culturally aware even when you're teaching that. Now, with that being said, I'll also say, when it comes to the whole teaching piece, it's not just about, and I don't know if you teach grace giving, if you teach 10% at your church, regardless of what you teach. Let's say if it is the 10% that you teach at your church, it's not just about asking for the 10% or teaching just about generosity. Because I think we all know how to be able to, at some degree, know how to teach it. We may just be scared to teach about that. But let's say you are okay with teaching it. The other part of that is being able to actually teach them how to steward the 90%. And sometimes we do a disservice when we only teach about the 10%, but we don't actually teach them how to steward the 90. The reason why it's so difficult to give the 10 is because they don't know how to steward the 90%. So do you have financial literacy workshops? Maybe that's not necessarily your skill set. If it's not your skill set, you don't have to go out and, I mean, of course, go learn that for your own, budgeting and your own financial literacy, but you don't feel obligated to have to teach that yourself. You invite somebody who is good in that type of stuff in to be able to teach that stuff. So don't feel like you have to be the one to be able to teach that stuff. But you need to be able to make sure that on a regular basis, your congregation has the ability to know how to steward the 90% so that the 10% is easy. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is make giving easy. Make giving easy. One of the first things that I did when I first got here was that I had to make sure that technology was here. People were able to give in a technological way. That's making it very easy. It's very visible. There are QR codes for people just to be able to scan. They can text a number. immediately, even in the middle of service, and the giving form will automatically be sent to their phone in that regard. People, I also have it where I set up recurring giving, and I push that a lot. Recurring giving, just like they have recurring giving when it comes to Netflix and Amazon and all these other people. Just as you take them seriously, you can take the body of Christ like that seriously. And what that does for us is that it cuts down on our accounting staff having to go and sift through envelopes all the time, right? It cuts down human error. That means you don't have to pay a lot of money for your accounting staff. Why? Because everybody's doing it electronically in that regard. You're able to budget better. So if I got 100 people going inside the new year and they've already set up recurring giving, going inside the new year, I already know that I have a certain amount that I know that I'm probably going to get in order to be able to make that budget. Already going inside the new year. So you have technology today that you didn't have in the previous generations. So make giving as easy. I'll also say around the church, I put up offering boxes around the church. It has giving envelopes right under it. It also has all of the things regarding electronic giving. That is specifically placed around exits and where there's a lot of traffic. Wherever people are going, they're able to see it, and people are able to give all throughout the week when we're having all different types of things that are going on, whether it's Bible study, whatever it might be. They can fill it out and drop it right inside of that bin, and it's a locked bin. And then my financial staff on Sundays, they unlock it and then they add it to the regular giving pot. So make giving easy. Number 3, share impact stories. Share your impact stories. So you're doing things around the church. Okay. Make sure you're taking pictures of whatever it is that you're spending money on. If there is a renovation of the church, make sure that there's before and after pictures. If you have started a ministry of some sort, take a picture of what that ministry is doing. We got a food pantry that's here. And we serve over 1,000 people every month. We taking pictures of that type of stuff. And during service, I'm sharing some of those impact stories right at the end of announcements of just being able to share with people, this is what's doing. Because of your giving, this is what we're able to do. These are ministries that are being started. These are the people that are being served. And I'm showing them visually what's happening. And then on the heels of that, let's now go inside of our giving period. So I'm sharing the impact stories. Alongside that with the impact stories, something that I also started to do is I don't just send out contribution statements once a year. I actually send it out quarterly. We send it out once in January in a physical document, right? That way people can write it off on their taxes if they want to in that regard. But I also send out emails on a quarterly basis throughout the year. The reason I do that is because I want to make sure that one is staying at the top of mind. Sometimes people don't recognize, oh, I've only given that much. I didn't recognize that I thought I'd given more. Those types of things, right? So it's just being at the top of mind. But when I do send out those contribution statements, I also send impact stories attached to it. So it's not me just giving you a contribution statement on the back end, or there's a letter specifically from me to the church of ways that they're able to give, also what their giving has done within the church over that given quarter, over that given year. And share the impact stories in that document. Okay, so share impact stories. I'll also say, fourthly, honor. Give honor to people. Let's say during service, I'll tell you, and I just started this. I honor people when people do certain things when it comes to giving. I never honor people based on amounts. Don't do that. That would be bad. Okay, but you honor people when specific things happen. For instance, I don't care if you gave $1 to the church. If you're a first-time giver, I might just honor you. Like first-time giver, honor you in that. Or somebody the other day, what they did was they're an executive at a corporation, and what they did was they actually went to their corporation and they had their corporation match what they were already giving. So when it comes to those unique things, we'll honor that. And that is a way of being able to also educate your congregation in ways that other people are giving in unique and creative ways, right? So again, it's not about the amount, it's about these unique ways and creating a giving culture. Okay, you're celebrating the giving in that regards. And then lastly, I'll just say you got to lead by example. You cannot expect people to give to your church if you're not giving to your church. And I know sometimes as pastors, we try to use the scapegoat of being able to say, "Well, I give to other places," right? And it's easy to go there. You can't use that. You need to be a giver at your church, and they need to know that you are giving at your church, right? I can say that I'm probably one of the top givers at Zion Hill in that regard. There's very few people that can probably beat me giving here at Zion Hill. So I lead that by example. My accounting staff, my financial staff, my trustees, they all know how they know what I give in that regard, and they know that I lead by example. So when I come and I ask, certain things, they know I put my money where my mouth is at the end of the day. So you can't talk about generosity if people don't see your generosity. Yes, you may be generous to the poor out there. Yes, you're generous to other things, but people need to see your generosity at your church. So those are the things that I'll give you, and then I'll leave for whatever discussion that we have at the end.
Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate that.
Yep.
So I could have retitled this the let's hear from Brandon's, because the other Brandon is from Tithely, and they are an online giving service. And so I asked Brandon to share with us not so much a commercial for Tithely, but that's kind of embedded in there. But share with us what you've got, Brandon, about giving, what your company offers, and then we'll have a discussion, Q&A. This is just kind of to whet the appetite. So Brandon, who is in New York, go for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity to be able to be with you all today. And yeah, thank you to the other Brandon. That was awesome. I think some really great points, especially the last one there, being leading by example. I think that's a huge one. Yeah, so that was great. And I'm going to be talking a little bit, like going back to make giving easy. We're going to go back to that a little bit because that's like what Tithely does. Tithely does exactly that. It makes giving easy for your congregation. And I'm gonna share my screen here for a little bit, just to have a couple points that I want to just highlight for you. Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that we have to think about is that there is a huge shift in how people give. And I like Brandon's example there, where he had multiple ways for people to give all throughout the church. But we're seeing our data at Tithely, we're seeing that over 60% of donors have an appetite to give online. They want to donate digitally. And the simple reason for that is because that's how the world works right now. Everything's done online. Everything you pay is either through a digital invoice, or you're using Venmo to send someone money, or you're using the Chick-fil-A app to get Chick-fil-A or whatever it may be. I don't know. Does In-N-Out have an app? I know In-N-Out's more that way, but I don't think they do. But I don't know if Chick-fil-A is all the way out there, but if it is, that's what I use all the time, is Chick-fil-A. So everyone's doing things on apps. Everyone's doing things digitally. So like when people want to give to your church, they want to do that the same way. They want to be able to give online. And so you need to have a good online giving solution set up. And really what's going to happen in the next couple of years, as we're seeing, is that, one, I will tell you, cash is still king, as everyone will tell you. Dave Ramsey will tell you cash is still king, but digital giving is trailing very, very closely behind cash. So through Tithely, we see about it's like maybe a 20% difference between cash giving and online giving. Like, it's not very much, and it's grown, especially since 2020. 2020, everyone got in online giving because of COVID and things like that. So we're expected to see that grow even more as time goes on. But really, the main driver behind that growth is that the millennial generation is inheriting all this wealth from the boomer generation. And that's just because people are getting older, people are passing away, leaving all that money to their younger family and friends and things like that. And that generation, the millennial generation, is wired for digital giving. And there's no way to really escape that. Like, my bank is actually telling me like they don't want to give me checks. They want me to do everything digitally. Like there's little things like that that are happening all over the place. So your church needs to be prepared for that shift. If it hasn't already happened in your church, it will eventually happen at some point in your church. And your church needs to have a good online giving solution to be able to take those donations. And again, like what Brandon said, to make it easy for them. So that way they're not having to figure out, oh, I don't have cash and check, or I forgot to go to the bank this Sunday, and things like that. And really, with online giving, churches have reported and seen a 20% growth in overall giving to their church, and that's huge. I remember when I first started working at Tithely about 5 years ago now. I worked with a church that all they did during COVID is they drove house to house. It's actually in California, house to house, collecting their tithes and offerings, like those people's checks and cash and things like that. And that was tedious work. And it was such a blessing for them to be able to have an online giving solution where they didn't have to do that anymore. And I'm sure what happened as well is that that church's giving grew because not because like they got new donors or things like that, but the consistency of giving grows. And when consistency of giving grows, your giving grows overall. And really, the way we see that growth happen is because people are through Tithely and through other online giving means. Online giving can become a great consistent or can provide you a great consistent donor base through things like reoccurring giving, like what Brandon was talking about before. Is that if you have something that's set up for people to give online digitally and they can give it like Brandon was saying, like they're paying like their Amazon or Netflix or whatever, people aren't going to forget. And that's the biggest thing, is that we're trying to remove the roadblock of forgetfulness because again, my generation, we don't work in cash and check. So I often forget to take that cash out or even write that check. I just started using a lawn service this year, and like the first payment I made in cash and the second two, I forgot to get cash. I was like, dude, I'm sorry. I just got to Venmo you. Like, I can't run to the bank, like all that kind of stuff. So making it easy for people to give, but also making it easy for them to be consistent is what ultimately grows your giving. And I don't know how it is in California, but definitely in New York, a lot of people leave during the winter because it's awful here between December and February. And so people go to Florida, and some of our churches are like down in numbers, but those people, and what happens is like some of those people are giving cash and check, and then they don't do it between December and March, and that hurts the church. But having a solution like this helps people stay consistent in their giving and stay consistent even when they're not in the room, which is a big benefit for online giving as well. And then churches that use online giving are able to plan their futures. Brandon said all of this already, which is great, and I'm just reiterating it, backing it up, because churches that use online giving are able to plan their future finances better. They're able to see what their donors are giving, and they're able to see what they're getting every month. And it's also able to save their admin's time and energy as well. Yeah, like what Brandon said about the opening the envelopes, writing that stuff down, doing spreadsheets, doing all that stuff. It just equates to human error when it comes down to it. Like someone missed a check, or like a check got stuck in between certain envelopes, and like you know the stories. I'm sure you've interacted with them, had some of those similar stories in your church. But having a good online giving solution takes care of that for you and eliminates that need for human error, and also probably will save your volunteers time and energy when they're going to reconcile your books and count donations and things like that as well. And the cool thing, I know I say this, and Doug kind of gave that a little expectation there, is that I say all this is that not that you should do this with Tithely. This should just be your principles for when you're ever looking for an online giving solution. Your online giving solution should have these things in place. It should be easy for people to use. It should be easy for you to pull reports. It should be easy for you to see what's coming in into your church, and it should be able to save your church time. And this is what I'm talking about when I say all this. It should look like this, basically. You should be able to have high-level insights into what's coming into your church. You should be able to see how many gifts are coming in, how many givers you have, what's your weekly average, what's your average gift size, what's the percent in your church that's reoccurring. So like what Brandon said, like maybe you have some people, maybe that's a discipleship step for you at your church, is the getting people on a reoccurring donation, things like that. And you can kind of see how many of your people that give through your system are reoccurring donations and things. And that's like what Brandon said here too. This monthly recurring giving will help you forecast, like, this is guaranteed to come into our church every single month. And that will allow you to create those impact stories that Brandon was talking about as well. Hey, we can go out and we can serve this food pantry because we have an extra $5,000 that's coming in, guaranteed, whatever it may be. And then the other thing is that I like, is that your online giving solution should show you lapsed or at-risk givers. And this sounds, on the surface, sounds terrible, right? Like, why would we want to know that? Like, that feels kind of shameful. But the way I see it is that it's an opportunity for you to insert some pastoral care by way of data that you're getting from your online giving solution. Because these people that show up in these reports, they are probably not negligent, right? Most likely a lapse giver or someone who's at risk is someone who's like maybe who has a recurring donation set up that they've missed a few payments or they've missed a few of those donations. And that could alert you as a pastor, just say, hey, I need to reach out to so-and-so. I need to make sure that they're okay. Because obviously something happened to where, they're no longer giving anymore. And that could be an opportunity for you to insert some church care as well. Maybe they lost their job, or maybe, something didn't work out that they thought that was going to work out, that was going to give them extra cash or whatever it may be. And they've had to move money around or whatever. That could be something where you could just talk to them and maybe help them out. Like my church, we have a benevolence fund and things like that. So like when we look at this and we see people on these lists, it's just an alert to us to say, hey, we need to make sure we're following up with those people, make sure we're providing them with pastoral care, and see if there's ways that the church can now serve them as much as they serve the church. So yeah, I like having these reports in the solution so that way I can see people who are going. And then again, going off what Brandon said about celebrating those people who are constantly giving, like having a report like this is super helpful as well, because you can see those first time givers, you can see frequent givers. And the cool thing is about Tithely is that you can actually pull into their profile, and you can actually send them a text message or email, things like that. So that way, maybe you want to do that privately, you don't want to, shout them out from the stage, but you do want to send them a thank you. You can do that right in Tithely, and you can send them a message or an email. So yeah, hope that makes sense. This is some things, again, reiterating what Brandon already said a little bit here. But yeah, you want to make it easy for people to give, and to give consistently, but then you also want to make it easy for your pastoral staff and for your admin staff to be able to work inside the system and create nice reports and see the data that's coming in from your system as well. So yeah.
All right, that's good stuff. How much, I want to ask this question and then open it up, but how much of giving, either Brandon, is a discipleship spiritual matter? It's like, as a part of who I am in Christ, understanding that giving is a part of that without it being guilt-based or all of that. Brandon, go ahead. Brandon and Zion Hill, share with us. You unmuted.
Wait, you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay, got you. Yeah. So I mean, it's a crucial part of discipleship. Going back to teaching it, something. It's not that I want something from you; it's something that I want for you. And it's important to understand that it's not like God needs your money. It's rather that it's an act of worship, and being able to teach it from that perspective, being able to see that when we do grow inside of generosity, it breaks things like greed off your heart. It breaks things like selfishness and stinginess and greediness and all those different types of things. These are opportunities for you to actually break some of that stuff off of your heart when you do actually give. Giving, it creates this part inside of you where you are constantly doing what Paul wrote in Philippians chapter 2, where you're thinking about others people's interests outside of your own, right? And so when I'm also giving, I'm always thinking about, okay, this is something that is just, there's something more than me. And then, to top it all off, when you do give, it really prioritizes and saying that God is indeed first. Everything that we do for the most part throughout the day, we make a lot of financial decisions, whether we intentionally do it or whether it's unconscious. We make financial decisions every single day. And I think that there is something about that great man that said it this way: where your treasure is, so is your heart, right? Jesus, he laid it out nice and plain for us. And I believe that when you recognize that where your treasure is, so is your heart, you begin to recognize that your credit card statement, your bank statement, your wallet, your checkbook says a lot about what your heart looks like.
Yep.
Right. And so depending, it says what you care about, and it also says what you don't care about. Right. And so in that, being able to teach through that, I believe that is a huge component of discipleship.
Definitely, I'd say, yeah, same, similar manner. I would say it exercises submission to the Lord. You're submitting every part of your life to Him. I think about the story in Genesis 14, I believe, where Abraham rescues Lot, and he basically brings all these spoils of war into his household. But then Melchizedek shows up, and Abraham immediately gives him 10% of all those spoils, even though he could have taken all of that for himself because he's the rightful owner of those winnings. But he saw that Melchizedek was a spiritual superior to him, and so he laid down 10% of those winnings of that spoils of war to him. And I think that's the same way. Is like we see that Jesus and God, the Holy Spirit, all the Trinity is a superior to us, so therefore we lay down to us. So it's definitely, we lay down part of our lives to them through giving. Yeah, I think that's a huge part of discipleship and growth, constantly laying down our lives before the Lord, constantly taking up our cross and following Him. So
great. So if any of you, this was meant to be a conversation. So if any of you have a question or input, just unmute yourself, but we want to get as many in as possible. So try to keep it brief and to the point.
It sounds like the Brandons are recommending that the pastor be aware of everyone's donations. In the past, we've thought that that was a privacy issue, that we did not share with the pastor what everyone is giving. We didn't want that to have the pastor, be accused of being different with someone who is giving more or something like that. So you're suggesting that pastors should have this information, everyone's giving level?
I'll start with that. I'll say this. So let me make a general statement. Sometimes we do things because insert whatever pastor is did something bad. And because they did something bad, we end up developing a procedure or a philosophy to make sure that that never happened again. So the reason why we do certain things inside of our church is not led by necessarily God or the Holy Spirit. We do it because of fear. So let me first state that from the beginning, right? So, because we have a lot of things, this is just one example, but we have a lot of things that we have put in place in our church because it's not necessarily Holy Spirit driven, it's fear driven. We don't want that to ever happen again. So let's make sure that we first understand that that's some of the stuff that we have to wrestle with and we have to deal with. So now in that, I'll say, ideally, if you have a pastor that you can trust, the fact that he is not or she is not going to play favoritism in that regard, I would hope that you would choose a pastor in that regard to be able to do such. But in doing that, it works out for the favor of the entire church if you have a pastor that does not show favoritism in that regard. And maybe you talk about guidelines in that regard. And maybe there's some guardrails in regarding that information. And I don't know, maybe there's a group around that kind of helps make sure that, you know, there is not favoritism. But in doing so, if he or she knows that information, is also able to, you know, as Brandon was talking about, is able to reach out here and there, it actually serves the church well. I mean, just take it out of a church standpoint. Just think about it just from, let's say if he was in the business world, for instance. And I know that there are things that are different, but there are things that are in the business world that we can actually learn from and implement even within the church. I mean, a lot of stuff in the business world came from, it came from the BIBLE, you know, why they're so successful a lot of times. But if you just look at the business world, and when you look at a manager, you look at an executive, whatever they may be, do they not know who their who certain clients are? You know, do they not know that type of stuff so that they can make, you know, certain, whether it be educated decisions or whatever it may be? Now, again, in this particular case, as Brandon shared, the educated decision is who's the at-risk giver. So for a pastor, it's not that I'm trying to make certain decisions because I want to be able to somehow make the church revolve around who my main givers are. That's not the case. Maybe you put up some guardrails for that. But the reason behind it, or the heart behind it, is so that I may be able to actually do more pastoral care. I can intentionally reach out to specific people and say, hey, you know, I just want to call to check up on you or something like that. So I think there is something that we're not able to do when sometimes the pastor does not know that. And I think we just got to be careful in having certain things put in place because we actually fear what could happen. So I'll just leave that there.
Yeah, and I think if we go back to like, is giving a discipleship issue, my thing would be like, you would want to know who's in a small group, you would want to know who's in a Bible study, you would want to know who's in an accountability group, whatever it may be. Like, you'd want to know those things to not because like you want them to, or like you want to shame them for not being in them, but because you feel like that is like the steps for discipleship at your church. And if giving is one of those things, then you want to know who's giving. And again, you get that question comes to like what Brandon was saying, like if there's like there's like instinct inside you, like, oh man, I feel like I'm going to maybe like think of a certain way about somebody, then like maybe you shouldn't be the one looking at it. But like at the same time, there should be some pastors on staff or people you trust that are looking at it, that provide you with those reports, and say, hey, this, you know, stuff like that. Just because like it's just you want that information. Like, you'd want that information about any part of anybody else's discipleship journey. So giving shouldn't be different, in my mind. So
let me just jump in there about, I understand the question very well, because people are afraid that what is going to happen is that if the pastor has all of this information, he will use that information from the pulpit or privately to shame people. And what I did in years gone past, I need the information. But what I required of my team, what I want you to do is break it down to me. And I think Brandon number 2 talked about this. At least he mentioned it in passing. At least that's what I picked up. You have this information, then give me the statistics that I need. I don't need names. All I need is statistics to tell me how many people in this congregation of 100 give $100 or more. How many give 95? How many give 30? To break it all the way down to me. So when I speak, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reinterpret that stuff and put it in terms of, to personalize it. And if that hits you in the face, then so be it. But I'm not calling your name. What I'm saying is, out of 500 members, only 10% are giving 80% to protect this church. We need to do better.
question about, I was intrigued by the idea about the pastors leading in the giving and letting them know about it. Could you expand a little bit more about what does that look like to do that in a way that doesn't look, how does that look like to let them know how you're leading and giving?
And just so that I can understand, you talking about like how to let them know about as far as my giving specifically?
Right.
So, yep. So in that, it's part of it is just pulling off the Band-Aid in the sense of, at least with my staff, I am open, not in a braggadocious way, but I open it up by saying, I want to let you all know. And I got this from my mentor, Dr. Thurman. So I have to give homage to him in that regard. But I let them know, and they already know kind of like, the financial data, right? But it's kind of just saying, hey, I want you all to know that you have a pastor that leads by example. And by that, this is what I'm committed to for this year in giving. Okay. So just as I'm asking you, because at our church, what we have is we have budget partners. I take the budget, I divide it by 100 people, and whatever that monthly amount is, that becomes what I ask for a budget partner. I got a vision partner, $1 a day that you can give, and then I have your regular percentage giver, which is where you would have 10%, right? It gives different on ramps for people to be able to get onto, and I say this is what I'm doing this year, okay? And then I look around the room and I say, as leaders. Now that you've seen that I lead by example, as a leader, as a trustee, as a deacon, I also now want you all to now come to the table on what you're committed to. And then when we go to the church, I can say, hey, this is our budget. The leaders at this church, between the trustees and the deacons and myself, we have agreed to give 20% of this budget. All you all have to do is give 80. So me and all the other leaders, we're leading by example. So that's how I do it. Is it the only way? No, but like I said, I have to give homage to my own mentor, Dr. Thurman, of instilling that inside of me.
Do you tell them the amount you're giving, or do you just say a percent, or?
No, I'm completely transparent about my giving. So this is how I do it. So I'm completely transparent about my giving. Yep.
So you tell them I'm giving 500 a month or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. I'm completely transparent about my giving. Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of, just to add to that, I never told them specifically when I met with my group, the inner group. What I told them is that you know how much you pay me.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I want someone in this room to tell me, how much do I give per year? Now everybody know. There's no big secret. I'm not asking you to do that, but I'm asking you to follow and walk with me as we lead this congregation. It's that kind of stuff. Now, not you want to say, hey, look, I'm giving. No. To me, I think that would be, we would say that word. But what I'm saying is that, but in that inner group that you are dealing with, you are asking them to walk with you and lead in the congregation. They become part of the leadership. They understand that you are teaching and you are walking what you are teaching. That type of thing, yes. So, and I found it worked for me.
I wanted to make a comment too. One is, usually the pastor is the only person in the whole church that the congregation knows how much that person makes, or an associate pastor, because those are sometimes plastered on the board and people can go see it. But secondly, I was in a church for 5 months and they came and gave me a sheet of paper and I said, what's this? Oh, they said, our church always lets the pastor know what people give. So it was the whole list of everybody in the church and what they gave. Now, what was helpful, and that had never happened before, but what was helpful is, as I looked on the list, some of the loudest voices who were almost against anything we were trying to do did not give very much, but they let me know as a pastor, you better be careful because we may quit giving. I was able to then just say, go ahead. I didn't say anything about what they were giving, but I knew. But that was not a threat to me anymore. Now, in another church where I had no idea of what they were giving and the church wouldn't let me, I did ask the treasurer one thing. If somebody quits giving over a 3-month period and they're not giving, would you be able to just let me know? Because if they're still attending, it tells me something's wrong. And I would at least like to, in some way, shape, or form, check that out. So there we go.
And one thing I want to add about the show, the leading by example, something that you can do like this Sunday. If your church has like a offering moment in the service, like whether that, like if you have an online giving solution, get a QR code on your offering plates or whatever it may be. Like if you don't give cash and check, but like be that first person to put your offering in that offering plate. Like a lot of our staff would sit up front and stuff like that. And we'd be the first people to give and all those kinds of things. And I think that was a huge way, just a way to communicate, hey, we're worshiping just like everybody else is. And that's something that you can do like this weekend if you are able to do that. Because sometimes I've heard crazy stories where pastors will, because they know how much, because the church knows how much they make, they'll say, oh, just take the tithe out of my check, just deduct 10%. But then at that point, it just becomes like, it becomes sterile. And it's like, giving is a part of worship. So do it during the worship service.
One thing I really liked what Brandon B said briefly about teach about the other 90% of their finances. Basically, in part of my misspent youth, I was a career counselor. I help people build resumes and do interviews and all that. And I do that routinely with people in the church who are trying to go from a lower place to a higher place in terms of income generation, in terms of family support. So probably about a quarter of the church has gone through the Van Tarpley resume service, and it helps and it shows that we're adding value. I mean, and one woman who we did this for a year ago just joined the church on Sunday. Basically, we care about you enough to help you in a place that's really expensive to live in San Diego. We can help you get a better place. Jesus loves all parts of your life, including where you work, how you work, and what you do with dignity to generate income for your family. So
I like the idea of a narrative budget. And that way you can talk about and tie the reality to the finances. And like, for instance, at prior to a budget presentation, I presented the idea, if we had $50,000, we could do these 3 ministries that we are not doing right now. And all we can do is ask you to do that. If you want to do that, if you desire to do that, then we're going to ask that you would pray about it for yourself and someone else. And so when, if the budget committee can put that in the budget and you're going to raise the money to do it. I do it and I present it out there in terms of that. The other terms of a narrative way of doing it is put the whole budget in terms of a narrative way. For administration, say that you got, let's just say $100. $10 are going to go to administration, take care of this. $20 are going to go to upkeep. Write it out in terms of longhand, we'll take care of this. And these type of things. Even if you want to make it in terms of, say, salaries, as a narrative, as opposed to a line item. Just use a narrative budget. And I have used that effectively in my final years of ministry, effectively also. That's a thought, people.
Brandon in New York, give us the elevator speech for Tithely. This it's okay to give a brief sales pitch, just to let us know, what the service does, what it maybe an idea of what it costs, because it's not free. Yeah.
Well, so here's the beautiful thing. If you just want online giving through Tithely, it is free. There's no monthly cost. You're not paying anything per month. There are processing fees per transaction. So when people give, there is a processing fee that is associated with each gift. But the cool thing is that donors are able to cover those processing fees, and that's you can have that conversation with your church, but they can cover that processing fee and save the church money. And those processing fees for debit and credit card are 2.9% plus 30 cents. And then for ACH, which is like a bank transfer, would be 1% plus 30 cents. And then again, they can cover those processing fees when they give. So if that, effectively, when someone gives through Tithely, they're seeing like a church is seeing like a 2.1% processing fee, because a lot of people end up covering those processing fees when they give. And you know, a lot of people, it's another thing to kind of like tell churches about, or tell your church about. Even though I work for Tithely, I always tell my church, like, if you don't want processing fees, then give cash and check. But if you want the convenience of giving online, then like you're gonna have, there's a processing fee. It's just the way the world works. Like everyone's inundated with processing fees all the time. Yeah, so if you just want giving $0 a month, if you want everything else that I showed you, like the church management, like we have church management software, we have sites, we have apps, we have text messaging, email blasts. You can get all that for just $119 a month, which in comparison to something else, to another company, it's for just an app at another company, it's like $1,000 to set up, and then it's $99 a month just for an app. That doesn't include online giving, doesn't include church management software. So you can really get Tithely for a very affordable cost. And like what Bill was saying, like if you're not technologically, versed in all this stuff, that's okay. Like we can help you. We have support teams and we have onboarding teams that help you get the church set up, get you going in the right direction, and be able to provide good support for you. But really, the reason we do all this at such a low monthly cost is because we want to fund your mission. We don't want to break your bank. And so we want to be able to provide technology that's going to help you and be able to help you to engage your church, help you to take donations, but not, destroy your budget by doing so. Because sometimes technology is one or the other. Sometimes it'll break your bank, but then it won't help you in the long run. So, we want to be a good mixture of both.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
One of the things that I would also put in there is we as American Baptists, we want the churches giving generously to their church, but as a part of this association, it costs us to do ministry, and your giving can go towards the mission of American Baptists, like our mission work. We have offerings every year, 4 or 5 offerings: America for Christ, the World Mission Offering, MMBB, One Great Hour of Sharing. Those are offerings that your church should be receiving materials for. If not, let us know, and we can help you. Every church has a PIN number. So there's a whole process of giving towards American Baptist, towards the region, towards the national, towards the world. And we encourage the churches to be a part of that, because we are helping you do your mission work in the world. And so hopefully your church is a part of that giving. It's not amount as much as it is just being a part of this family and giving something and participating in what, we're offering resources to you, and that's a part of being a part of this family. So please consider that if you haven't, or ask us and we'll help you figure that out. But the first priority is for people to be giving to the local church.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to thank Brandon B. and Brandon. I did have a question in regards to Timely. I was wondering if you utilize that as your accounting software as well to run your financial reports.
So Tithely only tracks the income of the church. So like the incoming, so like you can see the donations and things like that and do the forecasting. We do issue bank statements and things, but we don't do any sort of like budgeting or bill pay. But we do have an integration with QuickBooks Online, so you can connect those two together. So that way you can have an accounting software that's connected to Tithely, and you can do your budgeting and all that kind of stuff in QuickBooks, and then track all your donations inside of Tithely. And it's actually kind of cool. It will put like the integration will basically set up to tell Tithely what line item in QuickBooks this donation is associated with. So like if they give to a certain fund, it will push that information and associate that gift accordingly. So that way you don't have to do a lot of manual work like, oh, Susie gave to the missions fund and like, I got to put this in QuickBooks. It will push that information over for you automatically and make it simpler for you.
Awesome. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Because as Brandon was talking, I just want to go ahead and just state this out loud because Brandon kind of just hit on it. And that is, as you all are kind of like going out there and you are looking around, there are three different softwares that ideally you want them to all speak to each other. Your church management software, this is where you're going to put all of your people in, right?
Yep.
Their addresses, their phone numbers, all of that type of stuff. You might create forms in there, all different types of stuff. So that's your church management software. The second one is your online giving software. Okay. You want the church management software to speak to that online giving software. And then the third one is your accounting system. If ideally you can have all three of those systems speak to each other, now again, you're cutting down human error. It's going to help your staff in the long run. You're not, downloading reports over here to upload a report over here, right? You're not doing any of those types of things. So if you can have those three pieces of software all connect to each other, then you want to be able to create that as much as possible. That's
Awesome.
it.
Tidely does that.
Kiki was asking about the different software. Membership Edge is what we use, which I believe is comparable to Tidely. Maybe Tidely is a much better program, but that's what we use. So she was asking if that's what Brandon meant by the online giving software. What he meant by the online giving was PayPal or Square or one of those. So that's the online giving. Then there's Membership Edge or Tidely. Then there's QuickBooks or other accounting software. So I just wanted to explain that to Kiki and because maybe Brandon didn't know what she meant by Membership Edge.
Yeah, actually, I'd never heard of Membership Edge before. But we would be, so we would be the first two that Brandon was talking about, the online giving part, and then church management software, which would be like volunteer management, service planning, member database, all that kind of stuff. I think I looked at, while Andy was closing up a little bit, I did look at the features of Membership Edge. It looks like we do everything that Membership Edge would do. But probably provide like a more cohesive solution for you since we have those two things built into the same product. Because if I share my screen, so like this is basically like what Membership Edge would be like what People is up here. And we'll be able to like see all the people in here. I can, go into Tanner's profile. I can see his school, his grade, when he was baptized, when he became a member, blah, 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 blah. And then tags would be like what groups are in Membership Edge, where I have different groups of people put together. And then like there's an event calendar and stuff like that in here as well. And then like what Brandon was saying, forms, things like that. So all that's packed inside of Tidely is along with giving. And then, but if you didn't want to use like maybe the hardest things to change for church technology wise are always online giving and church management softwares. And so we understand that at Tidely. So it's like, if that's too big of an ask to say, oh, switch your church management software, maybe we could help you in giving. And while we don't directly integrate with Membership Edge, what we do is that every time we deposit money into your bank account, we give you the option to download that deposit statement as a CSV, which would include, Adam's information. It would include his email or any pertinent information that he provided when he gave. And then you could upload that into Membership Edge if Membership Edge allows you to import data, which I imagine it probably would. But so there's ways you can kind of navigate like, oh, we really need an online giving solution. We like Tidely. We don't want to change our church management software. Tidely doesn't ask you to do that. You can still use online giving and import into any other church management software that you're doing, effectively making Tidely talk to everything, but not like a direct automatic integration with everything. But there is ways to get data out of Tidely and put it into the software that you are currently using.
So Tidely replaces Square or PayPal?
It does. It actually makes it easier for you because PayPal doesn't, one, their rates are really high. So like they're 3.5 or something like that. Two, they don't provide very good reporting. So like so when we're talking, when Brandon and I were talking about like admin time, your admins are going to have to like scour through, match up names, all that kind of stuff. Similar, like other churches will tell me, oh, we use Zelle. Like Zelle sounds great on the surface, but it's like you're not getting any sort of reports. And same with PayPal, you are not getting any sort of reporting, which can be hard for you, especially like, heaven forbid, the IRS says, hey, we want an audit. Like, that would, if you're solely using PayPal, that's going to really stink. And be hard for you to reconcile that stuff. But with Tithely, you have all the information right there at your fingertips anytime that you want it. So, we would replace things like Square and PayPal, and also, Membership Edge and stuff like that. The only thing we don't provide is accounting software fully.
Yeah, just a quick question, and for anyone really here. So I found that people in the church are pretty open to like general giving sermons. That's not very challenging, you don't get pushback. But I am terrible at estate planning conversations. If anyone here has, guidelines for that or resources to be helpful, it's just creepy. I mean, I think because I find myself uncomfortable having the conversation, that probably communicates itself, but I know that's important and I'm not very good at it. So if y'all have pointers for how to deal with that, giving as an aspect of how people approach their estate, I'd love to hear about it. You know what I mean? Like basically heritage giving. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
And Van, Rainbow Acres, I think, does a very good job at that. They have and it's back to Brandon Bolden's comment about honoring people that give. They have a legacy luncheon for people to honor people who do that, who just include a gift in their estate. They don't publicize the amounts. Again, what Brandon said, you leave the money discussion out of it, but you do say, here are some people that are doing, putting their money where their mouth is, even as they go to the great beyond, and as they go to heaven, and they are also communicating to their loved ones, their family and friends. We believe in this institution, this church, so much that we've made that part of our giving, part of our estate, part of our will. Also, I've seen pastors get really tripped up when they try to explain this. Another thing, and Susan Hall was doing this. She would just leave at the same legacy luncheon. She would leave just cards, 3x5 cards. Do you know more? Do you know about legacy luncheon? Or I know, they made it easy to check a box saying that they'd like more information on the legacy luncheon. That keeps the pastor from having to try to awkwardly sort of explain it, or talk about people's grim death or impending doom, that they don't want to do. So hope that helped.
Going back to Van's question, and talking about it. So I just had a conversation with my financial staff just a week or two ago, in casting some vision about a legacy fund. And I think part of having that conversation is packaging it within the vision. And how I laid it out for them was the legacy fund. It gives people the ability to be able to take a percentage of whatever their estate is, and they're able to place it inside that fund. Now, right now, because I'm new here, everything is new. Right now, we're investing right now in that season. Right now, we don't want to lock up a bunch of money right now for an endowment's sake, but that legacy fund is heading in that direction. And in doing so, the vision of that is for, one day, as some of your churches probably on here did way back when, is being able to create some form of an endowment that will take care of operational costs in the future for the pastor's salary, staff salary, keeping the lights on, stuff like that, right? And so that's the vision for doing those types of things. And so me packaging this legacy fund, not just stating, hey, leave a percentage to the church, but the why behind it and what that's going to do for the future of the church. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to benefit from this endowment in that regard, but I am planning in a way today in, year 2 of my pastorate for 100 years down the line, so that whatever pastor that comes down that line, they don't need tithes and offering to be able to pay for the pastor's salary, or any other pastor for that matter. Tithes and offering can be for the widows and orphans. right? And so being able to cast that vision in that way, now people can latch on to that. And it's not just, to your point, Van, it doesn't just feel like you're just asking for some of my estate in that regard. But why are you asking? It's connected to something in the future.
Very good.
Hey, Chris Tong, are you willing to jump in here? I'm wondering if this resonates with you in the giving that you challenge the people at the Rock in Vegas to do. Is some of this what you do, or what is your response?
We're a small church. But we pretty much one of the things that I was thinking about was I really liked what Brandon's point on be willing to teach giving, and we've been trying to do that on a regular basis. And so one of the challenges that we have in our vision is to make disciples, is the disciple process is to help people understand that everything that they have belongs to the Lord, 100% of it. And so the challenge that we're coming up with is that the Lord only asks for 10% of his own back, and he's allowing us to steward 90%. And the challenge that we're having is that people think that they're generous by just doing that. And so we're trying to teach that generosity comes out of your 90%, because the 10% is what the Lord requires or asks. And so we're trying to work through changing the mindset and the culture in regards to that. And then we're also trying to work at helping Gen Z and millennials learn how to not just manage the resources, but how to multiply it. And we live in the greatest country with the greatest stock market in the world. And so we're developing classes on how to teach people to multiply the funds and the resources of their 90% in order to then give back for the kingdom's sake, not for the church's sake, but for the Great Commission. And so it's a huge ask, but it starts small. So we have about 10 people in the class, and we're working with them on a consistent basis. But the teaching part, I'm interested in knowing better ways to do it. I'm interested in more conversations on how we get more people involved in it in our churches, as well as churches get involved, because I think that's a component that we miss out, is that we stop at just the 10%. And how do we give as much as we can, and as much as our heart is willing to. And part of that is helping people to learn how to multiply the resources the Lord's given us. So that's the challenge. That's why I came in onto this podcast or this Zoom meeting, is to learn some more from you all. So
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just like I know the giving part, we as a follower of Christ, I guess, it's, for me, it's an act of obedience. Brandon said, like, and it's an act of worship as well. So but there's also a practice of one of the churches. I've heard this from a church before, but one of their practices as well is, as we give us 10% of our offering, our giving, the whole church as well is giving 10% of whatever income they have to missions. So they in their budget, they already, whatever 10% they have, they put it in missions as well. So it's almost like, as in doing our mission, our our 10%, our act of giving, the church is also being encouraged to do that 10%, so as their act of obedience as well. So I think that's a really good practice. So that for a church and for us as well, a small church, we're doing that already. We're incorporating that in our budget. So just so that we see our money also going somewhere,
How do you convert it's got to be on the plate on Sunday morning, that is my act of worship, versus the box around the church you give on Tuesday, or you set it up online? Are there holdouts? It's got to be that moment in the church when the plate comes by me. Or is that passe? Because I would think that's a challenge for some people, the old school folk.
Yeah, I've had to deal with that. When I was to that, I to that I had that conversation. If somebody says, well, you know what, it has to be during, the service, then part of that is, what were you doing during the pandemic when you were at home? Was that not worship when you were doing it because you wasn't here? So was that not worship when you sent it in via mail? And that wasn't on a Sunday. So and this is just to kind of open up their minds to understanding it, broader. I then also link that to other things. I know that what we specifically do here at church on Sunday is we come here and we sing songs in a corporate manner. We open up the Bible with each other and we dig inside the word on a Sunday. I hope that you don't only reserve worshiping God through song and opening the Bible to just a Sunday morning. So if you now that I have walked you back, right, to be able to unpack what you say is your rationale for doing it through Sunday morning, you would not dare to say, well, I only read my Bible and I only worship God through song on a Sunday morning. So why would you only limit giving to a Sunday morning? So then now we're on the same page here, right? Because I've unpacked that now. Now we know that doesn't exist. That's just more something that you've made up in your mind, because you wouldn't do that over here. So theology for me is at least be consistent across your theology. Whatever it is, be consistent across it. Otherwise, you have to kind of like die to yourself in that regard. But be consistent at least. So I have to talk to people in that regard. Now, I will say the other part of that is, for me, what I've done is I have just sent out, like when it comes to recurring giving, I just simply just make sure that I help them to understand why it helps the church and why it is even more beneficial and worship driven in a certain aspect. Why wouldn't you want your church to be able to budget better? You do that by electronic giving. Why would you not want the church to be better stewards over their resources? If there was a way for us to not inundate our financial team with so many cash and checks and paper in that regard, if there was a way to actually make their job easier and for them to actually be better stewards in that regard, why wouldn't you want to do that? It also brings that none of our financial staff are full-time, but the more people that may join the church, the more people who give in paper, it makes their job longer, which means that now they have to stay here longer. It's now allowing us to be better stewards if you give electronically in that regard. Why wouldn't you want to do that? And why do you not see that as a part of actual worship? So it's being able to have those types of conversations, unpack, walk with them, but help walk them backwards.
Here, how we transitioned, it's probably unique in its manner, but I think the transition from passing the plate to boxes and digitally for me, it was a faith issue. Will the people stop giving? will they transition into this new way of giving or new pattern of giving? And so it wasn't a matter of the people, it was my matter and my issue that I really believe God would provide through the faithfulness of his people. And so when I look back, pre-pandemic, we were passing the plate and we struggled. But during the pandemic, we actually gained in our giving. And so we took a look at that. And then when we finally had a location, a new location, we went, I fought against it, but we went to boxes and digital, and our giving increased. And the lesson I learned is that, oh, ye of little faith, Chris Tong, God has what you need. And so it helped us transition, and our giving has increased. And so just want to encourage people.
That's great. Thank you.